Welcome to my channel, where stories are not just told, but lived. Where every heartbeat, every secret, and every twist keeps you on edge. If you love emotional journeys, mysteries wrapped in elegance, and stories that stir your soul, make sure to subscribe right now, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's an experience you won't forget. It all began in a place that most people in the city preferred to ignore. On the farthest edge of town, beyond the glittering towers and chandelier-filled halls, stood an orphanage so old its walls seemed to carry whispers from the past. The paint had long since peeled, and the garden was nothing more than a patch of weeds, but inside lived children whose eyes carried stories far deeper than any book could hold. Among them was a girl named Amara. Amara was unlike the others, not because she was black in a society where prejudice ran like poison in hidden veins, but because her presence alone demanded silence. Her eyes were wide and dark, filled with a mystery even she didn't fully understand. Her laughter was rare, her smile rarer still. And when she stood in the dusty orphanage hall, staring at the broken piano that hadn't been played in years, the caretakers often wondered if she could hear melodies that no one else could. One night, as the children slept in creaky bunk beds and the cold wind tapped at the windows, Amara had a dream. She saw herself in a vast ballroom, the kind lit by crystal chandeliers that spilled gold over polished floors. Hundreds of faceless guests circled around her, their shadows blurring into the music of a slow, haunting waltz. At the center of the room stood a tall man in a white suit, his features sharp yet hidden behind the glow of the lights. He extended a hand toward her and whispered, "If you can dance this waltz, I'll adopt you." She woke with a start, her chest rising and falling rapidly, the echo of the dream still clinging to her skin. Dreams were nothing new, Amara often had visions she couldn't explain, but this one felt different. It felt real. The next morning, whispers spread through the orphanage like wildfire. A wealthy man was coming. Not just any man, the Harrison family patriarch, Mr. Alexander Harrison. A millionaire whose fortune came from sprawling estates and a shipping empire that touched half the globe. He was known for his ruthless demeanor, his lavish gatherings, the way he could slice someone's worth with a single glance. Rumor had it he was looking for entertainment. The children dressed nervously, tugging at their collars, polishing their shoes until they shone. Some hoped, others feared. Amara sat quietly at the edge of her bed, combing her thick curls with her fingers, her dream echoing again and again. By evening, the mansion's black car pulled up to the orphanage. Mr. Harrison stepped out, his cane tapping against the cobblestones. His silver hair was slicked back, his suit pressed to perfection, his eyes as sharp as broken glass. He entered the orphanage as though it were already his gaze sweeping over the children like they were pieces at an auction. "Line them up," he demanded. The caretaker obeyed, lining the children shoulder to shoulder in the dimly lit hall. Mr. Harrison's presence filled the space, his polished shoes clicking on the wooden floor as he walked slowly past them. Some children tried to smile, others looked down, trembling. Then his gaze fell on Amara. "What's your name, girl?" he asked, his voice low and cold. "Amara," she answered softly, his lips curved into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You're different, I can see it, but tell me, do you have value? Can you prove yourself worthy of a life outside these crumbling walls?" Amara swallowed hard, her dream flashing through her mind. "What do you mean?" Harrison leaned on, his cane, his eyes narrowing. "I will host a gala this Saturday. The greatest of my peers will attend. You can stand before them and dance the waltz with grace. I will adopt you. But if you fail," he paused, letting the silence suffocate the room, "you'll stay here forever, forgotten." Gasps rippled through the hall. The children whispered among themselves, horrified at the cruelty disguised as generosity. Amara's heart thundered in her chest. A waltz. She had never danced, never even seen a ballroom. Yet she felt the strange familiarity of the dream pressing on her like destiny. That night, she lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling, fear wrestling with courage. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this test was no accident. The dream, the challenge, the minute was all connected. And though her hands trembled, a quiet voice inside whispered, "This is your chance. Do not let it slip away." The next days blurred into restless rehearsals. Amara stole moments in the empty dining hall, where the old piano still sat, its keys dusty but not broken. She hummed the waltz she'd heard in her dream, letting her body sway, her feet stumbling, then finding rhythm again. The other children watched her, some mocking, others curious, but none dared interrupt. By the night of the gala, the Harrison mansion gleamed like a palace. Guests in shimmering gowns and tailored suits filled the ballroom, laughter mixing with the notes of violins. Chandeliers glowed above, casting golden halos across the marble floors. And at the center, Alexander Harrison stood with his glass raised, his voice carrying authority. "Tonight," he announced, "you will witness something rare. I have brought a girl from the orphanage. She claims she has talent. Let us see if she is worthy." The crowd murmured, some amused, others indifferent. Amara stepped forward, her simple dress pale against the ocean of silk and velvet. Every eye turned to her, and for a moment the weight of their judgment threatened to crush her. She felt small, fragile. But then the dream returned. The faceless guests, the man in white, the waltz that had called her from the shadows. The orchestra began. The haunting melody rose like a tide, and Amara placed her hands at her sides, taking a steadying breath. Her first steps were clumsy, her nerves twisting her ankles. Laughter trickled from the crowd. But then, as the music carried her deeper, something inside her unlocked. Her movements grew smoother, her turns more fluid, her steps more certain. It was as though the waltz had been waiting for her all along, hidden in her blood. The guests who had sneered fell silent. Their laughter died. All that remained was the sound of violins and the sight of a girl who moved not with training, but with soul. Her dress swayed, her curls framed her face, and her eyes shimmered with something greater than fear, something that felt like destiny. Mr. Harrison's smirk faltered, leaned forward, his cane pressed against the marble floor. The first time his cold eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. He had expected failure, humiliation, proof that his cruel challenge was justified. But what he saw instead was something he could not explain. When the final note rang through the air, the room erupted not in laughter, not in mockery, but in stunned silence, followed by a slow, hesitant clap that grew louder, stronger, until the hall echoed with applause. Amara stood in the center, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. She had done it. She had danced the waltz, but as the applause faded, Harrison's expression hardened again. He stepped forward, his voice low enough. "For her ears only?" "Impressive," he said. "But don't think for a moment this means you are safe. A dance may move the crowd, but can it move the truth? Remember this, girlie, you're here because I allow it. And I have secrets that you cannot begin to imagine." Words sliced into her, colder than the marble under her feet. What secrets? Why had he chosen her, and why did his eyes seem to hold recognition when they met hers? Amara bowed her head, but inside her heart a storm began to brew. This was only the beginning, the dream, the challenge. The man, they were all part of something larger, something darker. And Amara knew she was stepping into a mystery that would demand more than a waltz to survive. If you're still with me, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned, because what happens next will unravel secrets that not even the richest man in the city can keep buried. This is just the first step of Amara's journey, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes after. The echo of applause still lingered in Amara's ears long after the last guest had left the grand ballroom. Her body felt heavy, her legs trembling from the effort of the waltz. But her heart carried an unease that no dance could wash away. The mansion's silence now felt heavier than the music had been. Every corner seemed to breathe with secrets, and every shadow appeared alive with something waiting, watching. The servants began clearing glasses and sweeping glitter from the marble floors, but none dared speak in Amara's presence. They looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and pity, as if they already knew something she didn't. She wanted to ask them, to break through their silence, but each time her gaze met theirs, they lowered their eyes and busied their hands. Mr. Harrison, however, had no such hesitation. He approached slowly, his cane tapping rhythmically as though marking the beat of some unseen song. His eyes bore into her, calculating, dissecting. "You surprised me," he admitted, his voice low and smooth like poison disguised as wine. "Expected nothing but failure, humiliation. And yet you danced as though the music itself lived in your veins." Amara swallowed, her throat dry. "You said, if I danced the waltz, you would adopt me." The corner of his mouth twitched into something resembling a smile, but it carried no warmth. "I did say that, and I will keep my word. For now. For now." The words struck her like a cold blade. Was this a promise or a threat? She wanted to ask, but the weight of his gaze pinned her in silence. Instead, he gestured for a servant. "Prepare her quarters." Mara's breath caught. Quarters, not a room at the orphanage, not a return to her life of peeling walls and cracked ceilings. She was to stay here in the mansion. As the servants led her away, she cast one last glance at Harrison. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something she could not name. Recognition, hatred, a secret he refused to speak aloud. Her new quarters were nothing like the orphanage. The room was vast, with tall windows draped in velvet, a canopy bed, and a mirror so large it reflected the entire chamber. Mara stood at the threshold, feeling like she had stepped into another world. She should have felt joy, maybe relief. Instead, a chill slithered through her. When the servants left her alone, she approached the mirror. Her reflection stared back her wide dark eyes, her curls, the faint trace of exhaustion on her face. But then, for the briefest moment, the reflection moved differently than she had. She blinked, stepping back in shock. The glass only showed her now, normal and still. Had she imagined it? The night crept on, and sleep refused to come. Amara tossed on the silk sheets, her mind replaying the night over and over. The applause, the smirk, the words, "For now." And then, as the clock struck midnight, she heard it the faintest strains of music. A waltz. She sat up, her breath caught. In her chest, the sound was distant, as though carried through the very bones of the mansion. Drawn like a moth to flame, she slipped from her bed and crept into the corridor. The music grew louder with every step, leading her down winding hallways lined with portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow her. Finally, she reached a door at the end of the corridor. It was slightly ajar, the music spilling through like mist. She pushed it open and gasped. The room beyond was another ballroom. But unlike the glittering hall from earlier, this one was cloaked in dust and shadow. The chandeliers were dark, the floor cracked, but in the center stood a piano with its keys pressed by invisible hands, playing the same haunting waltz she had danced. And then she saw him, a figure in white, tall and faceless, just like in her dream. He stood at the center, his hand extended toward her. "If you can dance this waltz," his voice whispered, though his lips never moved, "you'll find the truth." Amara stumbled back, her heart hammering. "Who are you?" she whispered. But the figure only tilted its head, and the music swelled. Her feet moved against her will, sliding forward, stepping into the rhythm. She tried to resist, but the song pulled her, wrapped around her like chains of silk. She spun, twirled, her breath short, her limbs heavy with exhaustion, and then dashed darkness when she awoke. She was back in her room. The sunlight streamed through the velvet curtains, warm and indifferent to the storm inside her. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. But then she looked down at her feet. Her soles were black with dust, and her nightdress carried faint traces of the ballroom's floor. It had been real. That morning, Harrison summoned her to his study. The room was lined with shelves of books bound in leather, a globe in the corner, and a fireplace that burned though the day was warm. He sat behind his desk, his cane resting against the wood. His eyes locked on her as she entered. "You look tired," he said simply. "Bad dreams?" Her mouth went dry. Did he know?
Had he been watching?
She faltered.
I heard.
Music. Something flickered in his eyes, so brief she almost missed it. Ah, the mansion has its echoes. It is old. Sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. He leaned forward, his voice soft but sharp. "Tell me, Amara, do you believe in fate?" She hesitated. "I don't know." "You should." His gaze was piercing. "'Cause whether you like it or not, fate has already chosen you." Before she could ask what he meant, a knock interrupted them. A young maid entered, her eyes darting nervously between Amara and Harrison. "Sir, the tailor has arrived." "Good," Harrison said, dismissing Amara with a wave of his hand. "Go. You'll need proper attire. My world does not tolerate mediocrity." The tailor fitted her 4 gowns finer than anything she had ever touched. Silk, lace, colors that glowed under the candlelight. Mind spun with questions. Why had Harrison chosen her? Why the dance? Why the music at midnight? That evening, as she wandered the halls, she noticed the maid from earlier lingering near the kitchen. Their eyes met, and the maid gave the faintest shake of her head before whispering, "Be careful. This house, it remembers." Amara froze. "What do you mean?" But the maid quickly turned away, busying herself with trays of silverware. That night, the waltz returned. This time Amara did not fight it. She followed willingly, her bare feet silent against the cold marble as she returned to the forgotten ballroom. The figure in white was waiting again. He extended his hand. Again, the music swelled. But this time Amara spoke before moving. "Why me?" she demanded. "Why the dance? What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head, and though its face was featureless, she felt its gaze pierce her soul. Because it whispered, "You are not who you think you are. Neither is he." Her breath caught. "Harrison." The figure only raised its hand higher, the music trembling with urgency. "Dance and you will see." Her hands shook, her body cold with dread, but she stepped forward. The moment her fingers brushed the air near his, the ballroom erupted with light. The chandeliers flared, the floor gleamed, and the shadows peeled away like curtains. Suddenly, she was not in the dusty hall, but in a vision. She saw a younger Harrison, decades ago, standing where she now stood, and beside him, a woman. Dark-skinned, beautiful, her laughter filling the hall. They danced together, their movements seamless, their joy radiant. Amara gasped. She knew that woman, not personally, but instinctively. Her face was burned into Amara's soul. "So the memory had lived there all along, Mother," she whispered. The vision shattered. The ballroom went dark again. The figure was gone. Amara collapsed to her knees, her body shaking. The truth pressed against her chest like a weight too heavy to bear. She was not just an orphan. She was connected to this mansion, to Harrison. 2 secrets buried deep in time. But why had he never spoken of it? Why hide the truth? As she stumbled back to her room, her mind reeled with questions, fear twisting tighter around her. The mansion was no longer just a home. It was a prison of secrets, and she was at the center of them all, and deep in the shadows of the hall. Alexander Harrison watched her go, his eyes unreadable, his lips whispering words no one could hear. She's beginning to remember. The days that followed felt like walking through a labyrinth where every hallway whispered lies, and every doorway hid truths Amara was not ready to face. She wandered the mansion, each corner heavy with silence, each portrait's painted eyes, watching her with an unsettling familiarity. At dinner, Harrison sat at the long table's head, his silverware clinking against porcelain, his expression as unreadable as ever. He spoke little, and when he did, his words seemed carefully chosen, so every syllable had a weight she couldn't yet understand. Amara tried to ask questions about the house, about her place here, but he would only smirk and deflect. "You'll learn in time," he would say. Curiosity is dangerous when it isn't earned. But her curiosity burned brighter with each passing night. The maid, the same one who had warned her in the kitchen, began appearing more often. Her name was Lillian, a girl no older than 20. With quick hands and quicker eyes, she worked silently, but sometimes, when no one was looking, she would glance at Amara with urgency, as if begging her to notice something left unsaid. One evening, as Amara sat by the window, staring into the moonlit gardens, Lillian slipped quietly into her room. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Amara turned sharply. What do you mean? Lillian's hands twisted the fabric of her apron. This house, it keeps things, memories, souls. They don't leave even when they should. And you? Her voice broke off, her eyes darting toward the door as though the walls themselves could hear. You're tied to it. Amara's breath caught. Tied to it? How? But before Lillian could answer, a sudden knock rattled the door. Harrison's voice followed, smooth and cold. Is everything all right in there? The maid went pale, bowing quickly before rushing past him into the hall. Amara stood frozen, her pulse racing as Harrison entered. His gaze swept the room, lingering for a moment too long on the mirror before settling on her. Be careful who you trust, he murmured. Not all whispers are meant to be heard. He left without another word, but his warning felt less like concern and more like a threat. That night, the waltz returned, more powerful than ever. The music seemed to seep through the walls, pulling at her bones, demanding her presence. She resisted, clinging to her bed, but the sound grew louder, unbearable, until she could no longer deny it. She found herself once more in the abandoned ballroom. The figure in white awaited her, still faceless, still patient. You saw her, the figure whispered, its voice echoing through the chamber. Your mother. Amara's eyes burned. Didn't he tell me? Why does Harrison act like I'm nothing but a burden? It's because truth is a weight he cannot carry, the figure replied. And because your existence is the key to everything he fears. What fears? She demanded, but the figure did not answer. Instead, it reached out again. Dance. This time, Amara refused. She planted her feet firmly on the dusty floor. Not until you tell me who you are. Why do you haunt me? Why do you pull me here night after night? The silence was suffocating. Then, slowly, the faceless figure lowered its hand. The chandeliers flickered weakly, casting shadows that stretched long and strange. I am what remains of the promise, it whispered. And soon, you will have to choose whether to fulfill it or destroy it. The music died. The figure vanished. Amara collapsed, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She didn't know what the promise was, or why she was at the center of it. But one truth had become undeniable. Her mother had been here, in this house, tied to Harrison in ways he refused to admit. The following morning, she confronted him. I saw her, she blurted, stepping into his study. Harrison looked up from his papers, his eyes narrowing. Saw who? My mother. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. She danced with you, in that ballroom. Why have you hidden it from me? For the first time, his composure slipped. His hand tightened around the cane, his knuckles white. You don't know what you're talking about, he said sharply. I do. Amara shouted. She was here. I saw her. You knew her, didn't you? The silence between them stretched taut, like a wire about to snap. Harrison's gaze darkened, his jaw clenched. At last he spoke, his voice low and bitter. Yes, I knew her. And that is why you will never be free of this house. Amara's knees weakened. What do you mean? But he offered no explanation. He only turned away, his shoulders heavy with something that looked almost like regret. That night, Lillian returned. This time, she carried a small box hidden beneath her apron. She thrust it into Amara's hands, her eyes wide with urgency. Keep this safe, she whispered. Don't let him see it. It belonged to your mother. Amara's fingers trembled as she opened the box. Inside lay a locket, old and tarnished, but when she pressed it open, a faded photograph stared back at her. A woman her mother and, beside her, unmistakable in his youth, was Alexander Harrison. Her stomach dropped. The truth could no longer be denied. Her mother had not only known Harrison, she had been part of his life, part of his world, and yet he had buried every trace of it. Why? The mansion groaned around her, the wind whistling through its cracks like voices calling from the past. She clutched the locket to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. She was not just an orphan. She was part of a history Harrison wanted erased, but the house would not allow it. That night, the waltz did not come from the ballroom. It came from the walls of her own room. The mirror shimmered, the glass rippling like water. And in its surface, she saw not herself, but her mother dancing alone, her face both sorrowful and radiant. Amara reached for the mirror, her fingers brushing the cold surface. The moment she touched it, the music swelled, and a whisper echoed all around her. "Find the truth before he destroys you." Her knees buckled, her body collapsing to the floor. The locket clattered beside her, its photograph glinting faintly. In the moonlight, and somewhere in the mansion's depths, Alexander Harrison sat alone in the dark, staring into his fireplace. The flames danced across his face, but his eyes were colder than stone. "She's seeing too much," he murmured. "If she remembers everything, I will lose everything." His hand clenched around the cane, and with it, the weight of a secret so dangerous it threatened to consume them both. The mansion seemed alive now, every corridor humming with secrets, every portrait whispering truths Amara couldn't yet untangle. Days blurred into nights, nights into restless dreams, and all the while, the locket never left her grasp. Hid it beneath her pillow during the day, clutched it against her chest during the long hours of darkness. Each time she opened it, the photograph gnawed deeper at her heart. Her mother had been here, with Harrison, smiling beside him as though they shared something more than a passing acquaintance. But if that was true, why did he deny it? Barry? Her existence? The question burned hotter with each passing day, but Harrison offered no answers. He carried on as though nothing had changed, inviting guests to the mansion, entertaining business partners, Aniska's mask of composure firmly in place. Yet beneath it, Amara began to notice cracks. Sometimes late at night, she would catch him standing alone in the garden, his cane pressed into the soil as he stared at the moon with eyes filled not with pride, but with grief. Other times she would find him in the library, his hand resting on a single book for minutes at a time before pulling away, as if touching it brought pain too sharp to bear. The mansion itself conspired to deepen the mystery. Doors creaked open. On their own, candles flickered in rooms with no draft, and mirrors reflected more than they should. Amara began to feel as though she were not alone, even when she was. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of something unseen, something unresolved. Lillian the maid stayed close when she could, slipping her small warnings in hushed tones. "You shouldn't wander at night," she whispered one evening as she laid fresh linens on Amara's bed. "I don't wander," Amara whispered back. "The house calls me." Lillian's hand stilled. Her face drained of color, and she looked at Amara with eyes filled with terror. "Then it has chosen you," she breathed. "And once the house chooses, there is no escape." The words haunted Amara long after Lillian left. That night, the waltz returned, but not from the ballroom, not from her room. This time, it came from deep below, from the very foundations of the mansion. The sound was muffled like music heard underwater, but its rhythm was unmistakable, slow, haunting, irresistible. Against her better judgment, Amara followed. She crept down the grand staircase, through the dining hall, past the kitchens, until she found herself standing before a narrow door she had never noticed before. The handle was cold, the wood warped with age, but when she pressed her hand to it, the lock clicked open on its own. Beyond lay a spiral staircase descending into darkness. The music grew louder with each step, the shadows pressing closer as she spiraled downward. At the bottom, she found herself in a vast underground chamber, lined with stone walls and flickering torches. In the center stood a grand piano, its keys moving under invisible hands. The waltz filling the chamber with a mournful echo, and there, by the piano, stood the figure in white. "You're not supposed to be here," Amara whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to him or to herself. The figure turned, faceless as always, yet she felt its gaze pierce her. "You seek the truth," it said, its voice carrying like wind through a cavern. "But the truth is a burden few can bear." Amara's fists clenched. "I don't care. I want to know who my mother was. I want to know why Harrison hides her from me." The figure tilted its head. "Then you must see what he refuses to show, eh? But beware, knowledge is a cage as much as it is freedom. With that, the figure raised its hand, and the chamber shimmered. The walls dissolved, the torches flickered out. And Amara was swept into another vision. She saw her mother again, radiant and alive, her laughter filling the hall. But this time, the image widened, revealing more. Harrison was with her, yes, but so were others. Men in suits, women in gowns, all watching as her mother danced. She moved with grace, with power, commanding the room in a way Amara recognized. Instantly, because it was the same way she had danced. But then the mood shifted. The music faltered. Harrison stepped forward, his hand outstretched, his expression desperate. "Stay," he pleaded. "Don't leave." Her mother shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I can't. Not like this. She must be safe." "She," Amara whispered. The vision blurred. Her mother turned, her face filled with sorrow, and whispered words Amara could barely hear. "Forgive me," and then the scene shattered. Amara collapsed to the stone floor of the chamber, her body shaking. Her mother had left. For her. Sacrificed something, perhaps everything, to protect Amara. But from what? From Harrison? From the mansion? The figure in white loomed above her. "You are the key," it whispered. "The promise must be kept." "What promise?" Amara cried. But before she could hear the answer, the torches flared violently, and the chamber dissolved. She was back in her bed, drenched in sweat, the locket burning hot against her chest, as though it, too, carried the fire of the truth. The next morning, Harrison confronted her. His eyes were sharp, his cane striking the floor with every step. "You've been wandering," he said coldly. Amara froze. I couldn't sleep. Don't lie to me." His voice cut through her like a blade. "The house speaks to you, doesn't it? Just like it spoke to her." Her breath caught. "To my mother?" He slammed the cane against the floor, the crack echoing like thunder. "Enough. Do not speak of her again." Amara trembled, but she lifted her chin. "Can't hide her. From me? I've seen her. I know she was here." For the first time, Harrison's mask slipped completely. His face contorted with rage and pain, his voice breaking as he hissed, "She was my ruin. And if you're not careful, you'll be mine too." The words struck her harder than any blow. She stumbled back, her heart pounding, her mind spiraling, with questions. What had her mother done to him? Why did he fear Amara as though she were a curse waiting to be unleashed? Lillian found her later, crouched in the corridor, tears streaking her face. The maid knelt beside her, gripping her hand. "Tightly. You must leave," Lillian whispered. "Before it's too late." Amara shook her head. "I can't. The house won't let me. And I have to know the truth." Lillian's eyes filled with sorrow. "Then you must be ready for what comes. Because the truth in this house, it destroys." The candles flickered violently, a draft sweeping through the corridor. And for the briefest moment, Amara swore she heard her mother's voice whispering from the shadows, "Dance, my child. Dance until the truth reveals itself." The whisper faded, leaving Amara frozen in the candlelit corridor, her pulse hammering in her ears. She pressed her back against the wall, clinging to Lillian's hand like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. "My mother," Amara whispered. "She's here. I can hear her." Lillian shook her head violently, her braid falling loose against her shoulder. "Not here, not alive. What you hear are fragments, echoes. The mansion doesn't let go of what it claims. It keeps them, their voices, their memories, their pain." Amara shivered. "Then why me? Why does it call to me?" Lillian's eyes darkened with fear. "Because you belong to it. You were born into it." Before Amara could speak, a sharp sound echoed down the hall, Harrison's cane striking marble. The two girls stiffened as his figure emerged from the shadows. His gaze fell on Lillian, cold and merciless. "Leave us," he commanded Lillian. Lowered her head, fear flashing in her eyes as she slipped away, disappearing into the dark. Harrison stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "You've been meddling," he said softly, though his tone carried venom. I warned you not to dig into the past. It is poison. Amara lifted her chin, her voice trembling but firm. Was my mother. I deserve to know who she was, what she meant to you. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, pain flickered in his eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by his usual coldness. She was a mistake, he spat. And so are you. The words hit harder than any blow. Amara staggered back, her chest heaving. But something inside her refused to break. She clutched the locket at her neck, feeling the heat of its hidden truth. No, she whispered fiercely. I am not a mistake, and you know it. His eyes narrowed, rage simmering beneath the surface. Be careful, girl. This house has teeth. And if you provoke it, it will devour you whole. He turned sharply and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Amara trembling but defiant. That night, the mansion did not wait for her to find the music. It came to her. The moment she closed her eyes, the waltz erupted not in her ears, but in her very blood. Her body jerked awake, her limbs compelled by forces she couldn't resist. The mirror glowed, the surface rippling like liquid silver. She stumbled toward it, her reflection shifting and warping until it no longer resembled her at all. Instead, her mother's face stared back, beautiful, sorrowful, her lips parting to speak. My child. The reflection whispered, you are stronger than I was. Strength alone is not enough. You must uncover what he did, before it repeats. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. What did he do? Tell me. But the reflection only raised its hand, and suddenly Amara was. Pulled through the mirror, she landed hard on cold marble. The ballroom stretched around her, but it was alive this time, lit by chandeliers, filled with laughter and music. Guests in elegant gowns and suits swirled past her, their faces blurred like smoke. At the center, she saw her mother again, dancing with Harrison. But this time she noticed something new. Harrison's expression was not tender, it was desperate, almost frantic, as though he feared losing her. And her mother. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears. The music faltered. The guests vanished. And then Amara saw it, a contract on a table, inked in blood. Her mother's signature was on it. Amara gasped. What is this? Her mother's voice whispered, disembodied, carried by the waltz. A promise, a curse. My freedom for your life. Amara staggered, the truth slamming into her chest. Her mother had bargained with Harrison. She had given herself her joy, her future in exchange for Amara's survival, and Harrison. Harrison had taken it. The vision collapsed. Amara found herself back in her room, her body drenched in sweat, her heart breaking with the weight of revelation. She clutched the locket, whispering to the shadows, I will not let her sacrifice be in vain. But even as she said it, a voice cut through the silence, deep, bitter, unmistakable. You think you know the truth, Harrison said from the doorway, his silhouette framed by moonlight. But you've only seen fragments. She wasn't the angel you imagine? Amara spun, her eyes blazing with fury. You're lying. His cane struck the floor once, sharp and final. Believe what you want. But know this, if you keep following the waltz, it will destroy you. Just as it destroyed her. He left, the echo of his steps fading into the darkness. Amara collapsed onto her bed, the locket pressed against her heart. Her tears blurred the world, but her resolve hardened. She would dance. She would follow the waltz until every secret was laid bare, until every lie Harrison had built crumbled to dust. And in the silence of the mansion, the faceless figure whispered a promise only she could hear. The final dance is coming. And with it, the truth that will shatter everything. The days that followed blurred into a haze of whispers, shadows, and sleepless nights. The mansion had changed. Its corridors seemed narrower. Its walls pulsed with secrets. And the air itself felt heavy, as if the very house knew that Amara was pulling at the threads of its lies. The staff avoided her now. Even the cooks, who once smiled warmly at her when she snuck into the kitchens for bread, turned away as though her presence carried a curse. Only Lillian remained close, though even she had grown pale and restless, her eyes darting to the corners of rooms as if expecting something to leap from the dark. Amara's resolve hardened. She could no longer run from the truth. Each time she opened the locket, her mother's face seemed to plead with her, begging her to uncover the secret Harrison had tried so hard to bury. And each time the waltz whispered through the mansion carried a new urgency, as though time itself was unraveling. One evening, she followed the music again, but this time, it did not lead her to the ballroom, nor to the underground chamber. It drew her to a part of the mansion she had never dared to explore, the West Wing. The doors to the West Wing were always locked, the air around them colder than the rest of the house. Harrison forbade anyone from entering, and even the servants crossed themselves when they passed by. But that night, the locks clicked open at the sound of the waltz, the doors groaning as they swung inward. Inside, the wing was cloaked in dust, in cobwebs. The walls bore peeling wallpaper, the chandeliers were shattered, and the air smelled of rot and disuse. Yet beneath the decay lingered the faintest echo of music, drawing Amara deeper. She entered a room at the end of the hall and froze. It was a nursery. The walls were painted with faded murals of stars and moons, the ceiling adorned with a broken mobile. A crib sat in the corner draped in moth-eaten fabric, and on the floor, scattered like relics, were children's toys coated in dust. Her breath hitched. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing a wooden doll whose painted face had long since faded. It was strange familiar almost, as though she had once held it in her own hands. And then her eyes fell on the rocking chair. It moved back and forth, though no one sat upon it. Amara's pulse quickened. She backed away, but the waltz swelled louder, more insistent. The mirror in the corner of the nursery began to shimmer, its surface rippling like water. And in its reflection, Amara saw her mother again, but this time she wasn't alone. Child sat in her lap, a child with wide, tearful eyes. Amara gasped. "That's me." Her mother stroked the child's hair in the reflection, her lips moving, though no sound emerged. Amara pressed closer, desperate to hear. Finally, the whisper broke through the silence. "You were never meant to be here." The mirror cracked. The nursery dissolved into darkness. When Amara opened her eyes, she was no longer alone. Harrison stood in the doorway, his cane trembling in his hand, his face pale as bone. For the first time he looked not powerful, not composed, but broken. "You found it," he said, his voice hoarse. "Damn this house." Amara's throat tightened.
Oh.
"Tell me the truth. Was she here? Did she raise me here?" Harrison's eyes glistened with a grief he could no longer hide. He stepped into the room, his hand hovering over the crib as though it burned him. "She sang to you here," he whispered. "She danced with you here." "The house. What do you mean?" His jaw clenched. "This mansion is older than me, older than my family's fortune. It is built on a pact one made long before you were born. A life for a life, a sacrifice for prosperity. Every heir must pay it. She paid it for you." Tears blurred Amara's vision. "She died because of you." His cane struck the floor, the crack like thunder. "No, she died because of this place, and now it calls for you." The waltz thundered around them, shaking the walls, rattling the toys. The rocking chair slammed violently, as though an unseen force sat in it. Harrison gripped his cane tighter. His face twisted in fury. "You should never have been brought back here," he growled. "I tried to stop it. I tried to bury her memory, to bury you. But the house doesn't forget." The mirror shattered with a scream that wasn't human. Shards flew across the room, embedding into the walls, cutting Amara's arm. She cried out, clutching the wound, the blood staining her dress, and then the faceless figure appeared, tall, looming, its presence suffocating. Its hollow voice filled the nursery. "The time has come. The promise must be fulfilled." Amara staggered back, her heart pounding. "What promise?" The figure extended its hand toward her. "The daughter must dance, or the bloodline ends." Harrison's face contorted with terror. "No, not her. Take me instead." But the figure's head tilted, its faceless void gazing at Amara. She carries the rhythm. She carries the curse. Amara's breath hitched. The waltz swelled to a deafening roar. Her body moved against her will, her feet sliding into the familiar steps. She fought it, tears streaming down her face, but the music consumed her. Twisting her into the dance, Harrison lunged forward, gripping her shoulders. "Stop. Fight it. I can't." The figure stepped closer, its presence pressing against her chest like a weight. The toys rattled violently. The crib toppled. The room filled with a whirlwind of dust and screams, and then, through the chaos, she heard it her mother's voice. "Dance, my child. Dance not to obey, but to break it." The words lit a fire. In Amara's chest, she closed her eyes, letting the music move her, but not as the figure commanded. She twisted, spun, changed the rhythm. Her steps no longer bound to the waltz but breaking free from it. The mansion roared in protest. The walls cracked, the ceiling groaned, the chandeliers shattered. The figure screeched, its form flickering. Like smoke, Harrison fell to his knees, his cane slipping from his grasp as he watched in awe and horror. And Amara danced. Not with fear, not with despair, but with defiance. Each step tore at the invisible chains that bound her. Each spin shattered another fragment of the curse. The faceless figure staggered back, its form unraveling. "No, this is not the rhythm." Mother's voice rose above the chaos, stronger now, triumphant. "Yes, my love. Rewrite it. End it." Amara spun one final time, her body collapsing as the music shattered like glass. Silence consumed the room. When she opened her eyes, the nursery was gone. She lay on the cold marble of the ballroom floor, the chandeliers above her swinging gently, the air thick with dust. Harrison knelt beside her, his face pale, his eyes wet with tears. "You?" he whispered. "You did what she could not." Amara's chest heaved. "It's over." His voice trembled. "For now," but the shadows in the corners of the ballroom stirred, restless. And the faintest echo of the waltz lingered, waiting. The silence in the ballroom was deceptive. It pressed against Amara's ears like a weight, but beneath it, she could hear the faintest murmur of the waltz, hiding in the cracks, waiting to rise again. She pushed herself up from the marble floor, her body trembling with exhaustion, her dress clinging to her with sweat and dust. Across from her, Harrison still knelt, his cane forgotten at his side, his hands clutching the floor as though he could anchor himself against the storm. That had just passed. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were filled with something Amara had never seen before. Fear. "You've broken it," he whispered, though his voice wavered. "You've done what she never could." Amara shook her head, her chest heaving. "It's not over. I can still hear it," and she was right. The music hadn't died. It had only retreated, curling into the dark corners of the mansion, biding its time. The faceless figure was gone, but its presence lingered in the air like smoke after fire. Harrison struggled to stand, his hand shaking as he reached for his cane. For a moment, Amara almost pitied him. This proud, powerful man was no master of his house, no master of his fate. He was a prisoner, just as her mother had been. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly, her voice breaking. "Did you let me believe she abandoned me? Why did you bury her memory?" He leaned heavily on his cane, his shoulders sagging. "Because it was easier to let you hate me than to let you carry her burden." His eyes glistened. "She loved you, enough to give herself to this cursed place, enough to sign away her soul, so you could live. If you knew the truth, you would have spent your life chasing it, just as you are now." Amara's fists tightened around the locket. "I deserved the truth. She deserved to be remembered. I remember her every day." For a moment, silence stretched between them, fragile and heavy, but then the air shifted. The chandeliers rattled, the portraits on the walls trembled, and the waltz rose again, louder, darker, infused with rage. Shadows lengthened, slithering across the marble floor, curling around Amara's ankles like chains. She gasped, trying to move, but the force was too strong. Harrison gritted his teeth, slamming his cane against the floor as he shouted, "No, not her." The ballroom doors slammed shut on their own, the locks clicking into place. The air grew icy, and from the shadows, the faceless figure emerged once more, its form larger now, more monstrous, as though it had fed on her defiance. "The dance is not over," it hissed, its hollow voice shaking the walls. "The bloodline is bound. The daughter must finish what the mother began." Amara's body convulsed, her limbs moving to the rhythm against her will. The waltz wrapped around her like chains of sound, dragging her into the steps. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't stop. Each turn, each spin, felt like the tightening of a noose. "No," Harrison roared. He stumbled forward, his hand reaching for her, his cane clattering to the floor. "Take me instead." The figure turned, its faceless void toward him. "Your time is done. The rhythm has chosen her." Desperation twisted Harrison's face. For once, the mask of wealth, of cruelty, of pride, of it crumbled. He was just a man begging for redemption. "Then let me end it with her. Let me pay the price I should have paid long ago." The figure paused. The waltz faltered, its rhythm stuttering like a heartbeat losing its strength. Amara felt the grip on her body loosen just slightly, enough for her to gasp out, "You can't. Choose for me." She wrenched herself from the rhythm's pull. Staggering back, her chest burning, she lifted the locket high, the chain digging into her skin. Her mother's face glowing faintly in the candlelight. "My mother didn't die for me to become your prisoner," she shouted, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "She died so I could be free. And I'll finish what she started." The faceless figure recoiled, its form flickering like smoke in wind. The music twisted violently, faster, harsher, as though it was trying to drown her out. But Amara closed her eyes, her tears streaming down her face, and began to dance, not the cursed waltz, but her own rhythm. She spun, her steps wild and unbound, her movements a rebellion against the mansion itself. Each stomp echoed like thunder, each twirl shattered the invisible chains. Her mother's voice joined hers, rising above the cursed melody. "Break it, my love. Break it." Harrison fell to his knees, watching as the air itself cracked like glass. The portraits shattered, the chandeliers crashed to the floor, and the marble beneath them split open. The faceless figure let out a scream that wasn't sound, but pure anguish, its form unraveling piece by piece. Amara's body burned with pain, every step tearing at her flesh, but she refused to stop. She danced until her vision blurred, until the music dissolved into nothing, till the figure exploded into smoke and vanished. And then silence. The house groaned one final time before falling still. The shadows retreated, the air warmed. The curse was gone. Amara collapsed to the floor, her body trembling, her breaths ragged. Harrison crawled to her side, his hands shaking as he reached for her. You did it," he whispered, his voice broken. "You freed us." She lifted her head weakly, her eyes burning into his. "Not us. Me, my mother, all of them. But you let it happen." He flinched, tears sliding down his wrinkled cheeks. "I was a coward. I let her pay the price, and I would have let you too." Her voice cracked, but it carried steel. "Then live with it. Remember her. Remember me. And never forget the price of your silence." She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady, but her spirit unbroken. She turned from him, clutching the locket tight. Harrison reached after her, but his hand fell short, his body trembling too much to stand. "Amara," whispered. She didn't. "Look back." The ballroom doors creaked open, light spilling in for the first time in decades. She stepped through them, her mother's voice lingering in her ears like a lullaby, and behind her, mansion sighed empty, hollow, finally free of its curse. As she walked into the dawn, she whispered to the wind, "I'll dance my own rhythm. Now, always." And somewhere, far above, she swore she heard her mother's laughter, soft, proud, eternal.